Can we define capitalism? Many people can't. And it's not their fault. It's not used in everyday language. Economists prefer to use market economy, market society, these nicer terms. And when we do use capitalism, it's usually understood in a quite vague or obscure way. Why is that? Well, because true definitions hurt the system. And this is what the free forum is about. It's about getting to those true definitions to see how they can help us think bigger, more courageously, and perhaps act on them. So let's define capitalism. Capitalism is based on two pillars. The first one is private property of the means of production. Very fancy word to mean something that we all know, that we've delegated the decisions about what is being invested, how, and why to very few people in this society. Right now, it's actually three big asset managers, BlackRock, Vanguard, and Easy Street, that control over 90% of all corporations traded on Wall Street. The other pillar is wage labor. Wage labor is a big word to mean a simple thing, that most of us are trapped as we have very little alternative than to make a life by working for our bosses. So we need that money in our pockets if we want to pay rent, go to school, go to the doctor. This means that what we got to do is get a job. We hear this word from the very moments in which we grow up with our parents. You got to go find a job. These two pillars are connected through the engine of capitalism, which is the quest for profit. And again, this seems banal, but it's actually what is precisely specific of our type of the economy. When feudal lords exploited their serfs in Europe during the medieval times, they used those resources to build castles, to host banquets, to show their power politically. In the 50s, Mr. Ford was not interested in consuming his own cards, nor in spending all the money he was making in boats or some luxury item. The purpose of capitalism is accumulation of more wealth. So money is invested to make more money. This is the logic. It has nothing to do with fulfilling certain needs. It is all to do with building more. It is all to do with making more wealth. And this wealth is being made by those private investors who hold the means of production through the exploitation of workers. And we will have a moment to dig into the exploitation in one of our next explainers. Right now, I want to focus on the origins of this capitalist economic system, because it is here that you realize how the stories we hear once more serve to justify the system we're in. If you ask historians of economics, they'll tell you, most of them, that capitalism is nothing but a more efficient form of what has always been. That human beings have, as Adam Smith, the founding father of economics, put it, this propensity to truck and barter, and that markets fulfill exactly what is this human urge we have, and do it very efficiently so that we can optimize our behavior and our relations. This story sounds nice, but it comes with political danger. Why? Because it naturalizes our system. It has us believe that capitalism is the best of what we can be as human beings. Now, let's try to reverse the script and take another approach. One that critical economists tend to prefer. And one of these economists is the famous scholar Ellen Minskin Wood, who wrote a brilliant book called The Origins of Capitalism that I highly advise to take a look at. In this book, she says, the Smithian story of the origins of capitalism presupposes no origin. Again, because of this anthropological assumption that we all would want to become capitalist if we could. She says, capitalism is not just the continuation of a pre-existing trend. It's about a radical break. And this is what's important. It's not just a quantitative increase in markets, it's a radical change of our relation with these markets. Why? Because we no longer use those markets when we need them to sell the surplus that we don't want to consume ourselves, like it happened when peasants were exchanging goods in the medieval times and their markets. It's very different now. We depend on the market. Market dependence is this fundamental invisible order that shapes our lives so profoundly that we don't even recognize it. Because everyone knows that if we don't have money in our pockets, we don't make a living. And that seems spontaneous and natural. It actually isn't. How has it come to be that many people, if they can't find a job, they end up in the street? Through a long, long process of historical transformation known as primitive accumulation. This is a fancy word to mean something that we can all understand. Dispossession from our means of subsistence. Prior to capitalism, people had free access to their means of subsistence, meaning they were directly connected with what they needed to survive. Think about the tribes in the United States prior to settler colonialism and the invasion of the Europeans. Tribes were growing their own food, hunting, and exchanging those goods they directly were producers of. This condition is very different from the one we are in. We're in a condition in which we don't have these means of subsistence, so to get that money that we need to buy those goods with, we gotta work for someone else. This is the economic coercion that is directly linked to the concept of market dependence, which is typical of capitalism. Why is it economic coercion? Because it takes this impersonal form. I always tell my students, no mayor of Tulsa or New York is gonna knock on your door if in the morning you don't go to work. No one's gonna force you into a job. But guess what? If you don't do it, you end up destitute. So this type of coercion is much stronger and deeper than the political coercion, for example, a feudal serf or even a slave was under. We just spoke with David McNally about how slaves knew who their owner was, could thus mobilize physically either to murder their boss or to escape from this boss. And this is indeed how slavery fell. It fell because slaves were able to politically tackle their exploiter. Very different from today. Who are we going to go against? One boss? Well, there's another boss around. The point is that it's market dependence that we need to defeat. Market dependence, this invisible coercion, is who the enemy is. Not weaker workers, not that individual capitalist, but a condition that is not natural, that we've built, we are the architects of, and this is why we can also dismantle it. But this requires a whole new imagination of how to do things. And this is what the Free does, tries to experiment with these new forms of economic relations, hopefully to finally break free from market dependence. Because capitalism is not about freedom, it's about coercion. If we understand this clearly, we have a clear guidepost to help move us forward for a more humane, better society